Hello everybody, Raven Knight here, and welcome back to our second day into this Bible study on the book of Esther and the life of Esther, the queen. Very excited to talk about this with you guys today. This is one of my favorite books of the Bible, just because of how fascinating it is, and it is just so overlooked too. This is such an underrated book of the Bible. If you have a Bible with you today, go ahead and open it up to Esther chapter 2. We are going to be diving into the second chapter today. We're finally going to get to meet our heroine, Queen Esther herself. But she's not queen yet. She's not queen yet. We're going to talk about how all that happened. For those of you who need a quick refresher, here's what went down last time. Here's a quick refresher. So last time we were introduced to King Xerxes. Some of you know that name. He was the king who led Persia to fight against the Greeks. And if you've ever seen the movie 300 with the Spartans versus the Persians, the King Xerxes was the ruler of the Persians who led that campaign. Trust me, he didn't look anything like he did in the movie. Trust me. And it's something that a lot of people get confused about. But more to the point, King Xerxes is getting ready to go on that big campaign to Greece. He's about to head out to war. But before he goes, he's throwing a big party. He's throwing a big party. He wants to remind everyone of how powerful he is. And how powerful is he? He is Shahanshah, which means he's the king of kings. This guy is so powerful. This guy has so much influence that when he says a command, when he writes a law, nothing can take it back. Nothing can erase it. Not even him. Why? Because if you're the king of kings and you control an entire empire like this, you can't make mistakes. Mistakes just aren't something you do. So not even you can take back anything you say, because that would imply you made a mistake. So this king has a lot of power, but he also has a couple of problems. He's got a short temper, and he's very, very indecisive. You're going to notice that's a common theme with Xerxes. He's very indecisive. Now, granted, I don't entirely blame him for this. When you have so much power that you can change nations with your will and with your command alone, you need to talk to people and make sure you're making the right call, right? But kind of odd that you would call yourself the king of kings when you can't make up your mind about anything. But we'll see more about that in just a minute. Now, King Xerxes was throwing this big party to celebrate him about to go to war, and he's drunk, his friends are drunk, they've been going crazy for 180 days. And he thinks to himself, you know what, guys, I've got a beautiful wife. I've got a beautiful queen. Queen Vashti, oh, she's a knockout. Let me call her in here so that she can show herself off for you guys. Someone get Queen Vashti for me. Someone get the queen for me. Now, Queen Vashti, who's throwing a party for the women of the court, hears this command and thinks to herself, you know, my husband is drunk out of his mind. His patrons and friends are drunk out of their mind. I'm not going to go parade myself in front of all those people while they are all drunk like that. That is not a safe thing to do. So I'm going to refuse that. But Queen Vashti, don't you remember? This is the Shahanshah, the king of kings, and he gave a command. No one can refuse a command of the king. And Xerxes was not happy. He was not happy. But, again, the indecisive guy that he is can't figure out what to do about this, so he goes, I need help, guys. Attendants, come here. What do I do? What do I do about this? She said no. She said no, guys. What do I do? What do I do? And they said, no, man, chill. Here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. First, get rid of her. Get rid of her. Take the crown away from her. She's no longer queen, and make it so that she can no longer come before you. Punish her proper. And second, here's the problem, man. Queen Vashti did this. That means that other women may do this to their husbands. They may get inspired by that. So let's knock that in the bud right now. Make a law that says all women have to submit to their husbands. Make it a law that they have to, or they could be punished legally, okay? Make that a law, okay? And King Xerxes, get used to this response, goes, that's a good idea. That's such a good idea. Yeah, get used to that response. He does that a lot. So now we have that happen. He makes it into law. Queen Vashti's no longer queen. She's no longer allowed to come before him. She's not dead, because history tells us that she comes back later. But that's the last time she's mentioned in Esther. That's the last time we see her in Esther. She comes back later, so she's not dead. She was probably put back in the harem or allowed to live in another part of the palace, but just could never come before the king again. So we have our understanding of the situation. Now let's see what happens next. Y'all ready? I know that was a lot of setup, but we have to make sure everyone is on the same page. You ready? All right. Chapter 2 of Esther. We're going to go into verse 1 through 4. Ready? Later, when King Xerxes' fury had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what he had decreed about her. Then the king's personal attendants proposed, Let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful young women into the harem of the citadel of Susa. Then let them be placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. All right, so summarize that. The king is sobered up now. He's had a few days to think it over. He's gotten over his hangover. You know how it is. And he goes, oh, man, I miss Vashti. I miss Vashti now. Maybe I made a mistake. No, I don't make mistakes. I did make a law. She can't come before me anymore, but what do I do now? I want a queen, man. And his advisor, hey, man, dude, it's cool. Guess what, man? It is time for the Miss Persia pageant, man. We're going to gather some virgins from all over the realm, all over the empire, thousands of them, okay? We're going to bring them here. We're going to put them under the command of a eunuch. You trust this guy, Hegai, he's cool. He's going to give them beauty treatments, and then you pick your favorite. She's the new queen. And King Xerxes says, that's a good idea. That's such a good idea. So he makes it so. All right, so we know what's happening now. Miss Persia pageant is about to be on. It's time to meet our leading lady. Turn to verse 5, please. Here we go. Now, there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, among those taken captive with Jehoiachin, king of Judah. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. Okay, so we have been introduced to two new characters. I know there was a lot of genealogy there, but the main point that I want y'all to take from that is we have two new characters now. Mordecai and Esther, also known as Hadassah. Hadassah would have been her Hebrew name. Esther would have been her Persian name. Now, Mordecai is a good, devout man and was compassionate enough to adopt his cousin Esther as his own daughter when her parents died. So Mordecai's a pretty chill dude. He's compassionate, he's devout, he's loyal, he's a good man. Then you have Esther. Esther, let's describe Esther for a minute. How does the Bible describe Esther? She was drop dead gorgeous. If you want to get an idea of Esther, it's that she was stunningly beautiful. 10 out of 10 easy. This girl could turn heads, and that is no accident. And remember, guys, Xerxes sent out his commissioners all over the realm to find his next Miss Persia. And you can already guess what this means. She's about to be picked up for the pageant, whether she likes it or not. Keep in mind something. Keep in mind, this is not a, hey, would you like to attend and become Miss Persia? This is, wow, you're hot. Come with me. That's kind of how this worked. Esther did not get a, I wonder if this would be a good idea. No, a lot of these women were brought along whether they liked it or not, and we'll explain why in just a minute. Let's jump into verse 8. We're going to talk more about this. So verse 8. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many young women were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Hegai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Hegai, who had charge of the harem. She pleased him and won his favor. Immediately he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. He assigned to her 7 female attendants selected from the king's palace and moved her and her attendants into the best place in the harem. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day he walked back and forth into the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. All right, a lot going on there, and there's a lot we need to talk about. So let's take a moment and talk about this harem. Now, I don't normally do this, but there's a certain anime that I have watched that I would recommend y'all watching. It's really good, pretty wholesome. It's called Apothecary Diaries. It does a good job of talking about the function and purpose of harems in China. And it would have been rather similar to Persia. See, a harem, to be blunt, has 2 primary purposes. First, provide the king with sexual pleasure when and where he wants it. And second, to birth potential heirs. A harem was set up in its own area away from the main palace, and the women spent all their time there. They could not leave. This was not a matter of, oh, we live here, but we can go where we want. No. You live in this area. You live in this pavilion. If you're a concubine or part of a harem, you actually do have some power and sway, especially if the king takes a liking to you. But for the most part, being in a harem meant one thing. You're a sex partner for the king when he wants it, and that's it. But this time, guys, the rules of the harem are a bit different. Because one of the girls in the harem might become queen, and if you're queen, you have way more power and authority. You get to live in the palace itself. You get to do what you want, when you want, and as long as it doesn't interfere with King Xerxes, you're pretty much free. You got a lot to look forward to. Because if you're in a harem, all you get to look forward to is hanging out in your little pavilion or in your little area and just waiting on the king to possibly call you to have sex with him. So every one of these thousands of ladies were itching for the role, because here's the scary part. These women are the most beautiful in all of Persia. If they don't win the pageant, the only thing they have to look forward to is spending the rest of their life in this harem. This is not a good outcome. You don't get to go home and say, well, you tried, good job, we'll send you home with the consolation prize of a sticky star and a bag of goodies. Nope, this is, well, good job, but you're still drop dead gorgeous, and the king may want to break from the queen and may want to have sex with you, so stick around a while, you might be needed. Not a good fate, not a good fate at all. You got a lot to look forward to if you become queen. These ladies were itching for the role, and now Esther, as we read here, earned the favor of Hegai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. And if you've watched Apothecary Diaries, that would basically be Jingshi, the leader of the harem, the head of the harem, the one in charge of it all. He's a eunuch, and if you guys don't know what a eunuch is a man who has had their private parts removed, their genitalia removed, because you want to protect the women. The big fear for a king is that a guy who's not his family member, a servant, may have sex with someone close to him, like a queen or harem prostitute or concubine, and they have a kid, and now that kid could potentially be a threat to the king's rule. You don't want that. So to make sure they're safe, you have eunuchs watching them who have no genitalia to make the threat a possibility. Now, Hegai is the only one who gets access to the harem, and he likes Esther. Esther won his favor. Esther impressed him. So he says, all right, Esther, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to give you access to 7 attendants. I'm going to give you the best beauty products. I'm going to move you to the best room. Hegai goes out of his way for her because of who she was and her attitude. But there is more to this, okay? So already we see that Esther has been brought in as part of the harem, and she's won the favor of Hegai. And there's more. Did y'all notice the last bit? Mordecai is there every day checking up on her, making sure she's okay, like kind of hanging out outside the wall going, hey, Esther, you in there? How you doing? He's checking up on her, and he also told her, Esther, do not tell anyone that you're a Jew. Do not tell anyone about your heritage. Don't do it. It may not go well for you. Now, you may be wondering, Raven, what does that matter? Was Persia racist to Jews? No, they weren't necessarily racist to Jews, but they were still seen as lesser than pure-blooded Persian citizens. So that could eventually hurt her in the long run. So she was told, hey, look, Esther, don't go by your Jewish name. Don't tell anyone you're Jewish. Pretend to be Persian. Do not tell anyone. So we have a setup, but get a load of this. Ready for this? Read verse 12. Sorry. Before a young woman's turn came to go into King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 with perfumes and cosmetics. And this is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening, she would go there, and in the morning return to another part of the harem to the care of Shashgazes, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. When the turn came for Esther, the young woman Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Hegai, the king's eunuch, was in charge of the harem, suggested, and Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. All right, so those are the rules of the pageant. Did you catch the rules? You get 1 year of prep time. Ever hear the saying, a woman takes forever putting on her face? How about a year? We're going to give you 12 months. For 1 year, the woman go through beauty enhancements treatments to prepare for the king. perfume, cosmetics, all the fun stuff. She'd go to the king. Once she's ready, go to the king, spend the night with him, and then return to the harem unless he likes her enough to remember her name and call her back. And she's only allowed to bring with her stuff from the harem. She can bring anything she wants, but it's got to be from the harem, and it better be good because it better please the king. So Esther's got a rough battle ahead of her. What does she do? Well, she goes through the process, she works her way up, and when her turn comes, she takes nothing with her other than what Haggai suggests, and she appears before Xerxes. Now, I want you to take something into account here. Esther hasn't told anyone about her Jewish heritage. Her cousin Mordecai is sort of hanging out near the harem all this time just to make sure that she's okay, going through her daily beauty treatments and cosmetics, and she's having to compete with a bunch of other women, all hungry for a position she might not have even wanted to begin with. And this has all been going on for a year. That's crazy. For a whole year, she has had to compete with other women who all want the title of queen. She's had to survive a dog-eat-dog world without telling anyone who she is or where she's from, and hope that she doesn't have to spend the rest of her life in a harem. Think about the odds Esther faces here. She's competing with thousands of women. What are the odds she gets chosen? What are the odds? Well, let's find out. Verse 17 through 18. Now the king was attracted to Esther more than any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. She did it, guys. She's made queen. Congrats. She wins. She found favor with King Xerxes. She was the most beautiful and the one who pleased him the most. But what are the odds of that, folks? What can we take from this? What can we take from that? Some of you are probably thinking, Raven, this is a cool story, man, but what does that have to do with me? Several things. Again, think about the situation Esther found herself in. She didn't ask to be put in this harem. She didn't ask to become queen. She didn't ask to be put in the Miss Persia pageant. These are things she never asked for, probably didn't want. She probably just wanted a normal life with her cousin, chilling out. This is not the thing she wanted. But she got it. And now for a whole year, she has to spend all of her time competing with a bunch of hungry, jealous, very ambitious women who all want out of this harem, and there's only one way out. They better win and become queen. Esther has a snowball's chance of hell in winning. She knows it. And yet she still has to compete if she wants any chance out of this fate. Some of you guys today find yourselves in situations not unlike this. No, you're not in a harem. No, that's not what I mean. But you're in a situation you might not have asked for. You're in a situation you might not want. You may find yourself in financial, social, physical, living, whatever situation, and it's not what you asked for or wanted, but you find yourself in it. And you may even find yourself in a situation where the outcome may not be the best outcome, but you know it's the only one that you can get that doesn't leave you in a rut. And you need God to guide you. This is a time where you really need God. And a lot of you may be praying for God to guide you, to help you. And trust me, prayer is powerful, but there are a few things you can do. We want to take a look right now. What I really want this day to be about is we take a look at the 3 factors that led to Esther's success. What were the 3 factors? Take note. Number 1, and you can write this down if you want. The first factor that led to Esther's success. Your design is part of God's design. Do you think that it was an accident that God made Esther so damn beautiful? I mean, she's a drop-dead gorgeous woman. Do you think that was an accident? Do you think it was an accident that God made Xerxes so indecisive and scatterbrained he had to get advice from his officials to even have this pageant? And do you think it was an accident that Xerxes thinks more with his own manhood than he does his noggin? No, none of that's an accident. Here's a reality some of you may not realize. God has designed you in such a way to make you have what you need to be successful. And we see this in the Bible. Psalms 139:13 says, "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb." God was designing you the moment you got in the womb. And there's another, Luke 12:7. Jesus says, "In fact, even the hairs on your head are all numbered. Do not be afraid." Even the hairs of your head are numbered. God knows you better than you know yourself. If you ever say, "I'm not cut out for this. I can't do this," I got news for you. God knows you better than you do. God has set you up and created you in such a way that you have what you need. Do you think God would provide you any less than what you need to succeed in His plan? God made you the way you are for a reason. I said not too long ago that when it comes to For Honor, the meta may be beyond me. I said, the way the game is going, the way it's set up, maybe this game has just gone beyond what I'm capable. But here's the reality, guys. That doesn't mean I'm not capable of running the channel. God gave me gifts. God gave me abilities. God gave me a passion for storytelling, history, writing, and lore. And those things that He gave me aren't necessarily gameplay skills. I might not be as good as some other people in terms of gameplay. But that's not how God designed me. God designed me with gifts not related to that, and I'm still able to succeed through them. Don't cut yourself short because you don't have the gifts you think you need. God's already given you what you need. Your design is part of God's design. Esther was able to succeed because, firstly, she was designed by God to have what she needed. And Xerxes was designed by God to set her up for the win. Sorry. The second factor. No relationship is without purpose. Who was instrumental in Esther's life that helped her here? Who were the instrumental figures in Esther's life? There was one we all know, Mordecai. Mordecai was at the gate every day to check up on her and to encourage her. She had a spiritual guide every day in the form of Mordecai. And then there was Haggai, who became very fond of her. He gave her necessary advice and guidance. You can think of Mordecai like the spiritual guide and Haggai the physical guide. And don't we need that in our day-to-day life? We need the Holy Spirit in our lives, and we need friends and colleagues who have our interests at heart. And there's Bible verses to support this. Proverbs 27:9. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and so does the sweetness of a friend that comes from his earnest counsel. And then Romans 8:26. The Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought to, but that very Spirit intercedes with sights too deep for words. Mordecai was like the Holy Spirit for Esther. There every day, available at every moment, there to encourage her, to remind her, to teach her, to help her. Mordecai was like the Holy Spirit that Esther needed to get through the difficulties. And Haggai was a friend that she could rely on, who found favor with her and wanted her to succeed. And he gave her everything she needed, saying, man, you got it where it counts, Esther. I'm going to help you out. Now, here's the funny thing. Why do you think Haggai liked Esther so much? Was it just because she's beautiful? I mean, he's surrounded by beautiful women. What made Esther so special? We'll get to that in just a minute. But what I want you to remember is this, guys. One of the things that made Esther successful was she had spiritual guidance and allies and friends who supported her. There are a lot of times when you go through difficulties where you want to go it alone. And I get it. These are your problems. You want to deal with them yourself. Other people, look, I get you care, but I'm going to deal with it alone. I don't need help. It's my issue. I'm going to deal with it the way I need to. That's not the way to approach it. God did not design us to be isolated. He did not design us to go things alone. And you want to know something funny? You may think you're being noble or being strong or being brave by turning away help, by turning away the assistance of others, by telling God to just give me some time and I'll figure this out. But what you're really doing is insulting them. You're being a fool. Because what fool turns away a hand that's trying to help? These people, your friends, the Holy Spirit that God sent us, that Jesus said would be a friend to guide us, why would we turn those away when they only have our best interests at heart? Why would we do that? Esther succeeded, one, because God designed her to succeed. He designed her as part of his design. And Esther had a spiritual guide as well as a physical guide. She didn't go it alone. And finally, probably the most important, number 3. Esther was able to succeed because God blesses the humble. Humility is a key component in all of this. Do you remember what Mordecai told Esther to do? Esther, do not draw attention to yourself. Do not tell anyone where you're from. Keep your head down and get through it. Esther didn't draw attention to herself. She didn't strut around and flash any kind of badge to pull or any kind of card. She didn't whine about, I don't want to be here. I don't want this. And she didn't try to claim she was an oppressed class. Oh gosh, imagine if she pulled that card. Guys, I'm a Jew. I'm kind of like a secondary citizen. I need y'all to check your privilege. She didn't try to outshine or speak boldly of herself. She followed the advice of her cousin and her handler, and she did everything required of her to the letter. You want to know why I think Haggai liked her so much? Because of all the women, she wasn't the one trying to stand out. She was the one who was just trying to, I'm here. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm not trying to stand out or flash or be whatever. I'm not asking for special favors. I'm not trying to pull any cards or pull any badges. I just want to get through this. And Haggai probably went, I like that. I like that. I like a woman who is humble. And you want to know something else? God loves humility. The Bible has numerous verses about humility. Proverbs 3:34, the Lord mocks the mockers, but he is gracious to the humble. Psalm 84:11, the Lord God is like a sun and shield. The Lord gives us kindness and honor. He does not hold back anything good from those whose lives are innocent. Psalm 5:12, for you, O Lord, will bless the righteous with favor. You will surround him as with a shield. And Ephesians 2:8-9, one of my favorites. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that none may boast. God doesn't like a braggart. You know what? Here's a funny thing. No one likes a braggart. No one likes a braggart. It's annoying, isn't it? To see some guy just go up and brag about their accomplishments or whine about how, down and out they are, about how much they've had to go through, about how much they've suffered. You want to know what annoys the hell out of me? When someone just wants to say, man, I've had such a bad day. Everyone hates me. I've had to go through this and this and this and that, and I had to go through that. I've got news for you. No one cares. You're trying to throw a pity party to get attention, and it pisses everyone off. Don't get me wrong. I understand going through tough times, and it's okay to talk about going through those tough times. But when you wallow in misery, when you wallow in defeat, when you wallow in how hard you have it, or when you are so good and so perfect, you can't stop talking about how great you are and all the cool things you've gotten to do you know how much people want to walk away from you? No one likes a braggart. No one likes a pity party. God blesses the humble. And Esther could have pulled either one. She was one of the most beautiful women there, no question. But she didn't brag about it. She was also an oppressed secondary citizen in the Persian Empire as a Jew, but she didn't walk around going, I'm oppressed. Someone show me some sympathy. She didn't. She was humble. She was humble. So humble, in fact, that she won the approval of Haggai, the head of the harem. She listened to Mordecai, her spiritual guide. She had allies. And she knew that she was designed for a specific purpose. What that purpose was, she doesn't know. I mean, what good comes out of being queen for her? How does that solve God? How does that help God? How does that go into God's plan? That's the thing. We don't always know what God has planned for us, right? We don't always know. What does God want with us? Why does God put us in these weird or even difficult situations? We don't know. But part of having faith means that we go through those difficult situations recognizing that inevitably we're going to find out. And that is where we will call it for now. There's more in chapter 2, and we'll get into it next time because it ties into the next character we're going to be talking about, Haman. And we got a lot to say about Haman. We've talked about some interesting figures, huh? King Xerxes, the indecisive king of kings. Mordecai, the faithful, honorable, devout man who adopted our heroine of the story, Esther, also known as Hadassah, who was a beautiful but timid woman. Now we're going to talk about a man by the name of Haman, who would definitely count as the villain of this story. But we'll get to that later. Hope you guys have enjoyed. We got a lot to talk about. I'm so excited. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Take care.